In this video, I'll show you how to set up a model using SWAT Plus Editor version 1.2. You should already have installed the SWAT Plus tools prior to watching this video, as well as set up your watershed in QSWAT Plus by completing steps 1 and 2. If you haven't done that yet, please download the QSWAT Plus manual and follow along to set up the Robert example, which is Lake Tana in Ethiopia. A link to the SWAT Plus website with all of this information is in the description for this video. So first, let's go to the SWAT Plus website and click Getting Started link on the left here. So you may use the Robot files you created yourself following the QSWAT Plus manual, or you can download these files here, which is the same watershed with steps 1 and 2 already complete in QSWAT Plus. So let's minimize this and go to our project folder and double click this robotdemo.qgis file. So we've already got it open here. And next, you're going to want to locate your QSWAT Plus plugin button and click on it to open it. And you'll see steps 1 and 2 are already done over here. So go ahead and click step 3 to launch the editor. And the first time you load the editor for a project, you'll have to import your GIS data into the SWAT Plus database structure. So let's go ahead and click Start Import. And this might take anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes depending on the size of your watershed, particularly the number of HRUs. And once it's finished loading, you'll see it here in this blue box. And before we start editing inputs, I want to walk you through the interface. On the far left, in the dark blue color, is your main action ribbon. Hover over the buttons to see what they do. There's Project Setup, Edit SWAT Plus Inputs, Write Input Files, Run the Model, and Analyze Model Output. And then at the bottom you'll see 2 additional buttons. The first one is for project information. So we'll go ahead and click on that now just to look at it. And you can see your current project area, simulation period, which is currently default, and we'll set that later on. The steps you've completed so far in the editor, and a count of all your spatial objects. Now, under the project overview page is a link to the help. This contains a link to the documentation and the user group, so you can contact us if you have any questions or run into any problems. So let's go back to our project by clicking the Project Setup button again. And now we can click this white button in the middle to start editing SWAT Plus inputs. Now on the left, you'll see a large menu listing the various input sections. You can click the dark gray headings to expand and collapse the various sections. In this video, we won't be covering them all. Instead, we'll focus just on these top 2, climate and simulation, and as these are the 2 that are necessary to get your model up and running. So let's get started in the weather generator section. You have a few options for importing weather generator data. You can use global CFSR WGN database. So if we click here, this option is loaded by default. If you already selected to install the global WGN database during the installation wizard. If not, and you want to still use it, let's just cancel out of this. And you'll see a link here to download the file. Once downloaded, you should place this in your SWAT Plus folder. But by default, that's just C, SWAT, SWAT Plus, and under the databases directory. So let's go back to the import form. If your project was located in the United States, you also have the option to use provided US WGN data, which is located in the same database file we just talked about, but you need to switch the table name. So you can just click here, and you could click WGN US instead. Now you have a third option, and that is to import weather generators from CSV files. And that's what we're going to be doing in this demo project. So you're going to select CSV files from the pull-down menu here. And in this blue section, we just give you a description of the columns you'll need. And for the Robot demo, we already have these files prepared, and they're located in the WGN folder. So we're going to locate those here. This is our main project folder. Just go to the WGN. And the first one is your stations file. And then you're going to select your monthly values file. And then click Start Import. And you'll see we have successfully imported one weather generator. If you want to view what we just imported, just click this edit icon over here. And here you can see all the data associated with the generator and make any changes if needed. So let's go back. The next step is that you'll want to add observed weather data if you have it. It is not required to run SWAT+, but let's go over here and click Weather Stations. You'll see one station was created for us when we imported our weather generator, and because we haven't added our observed data yet, everything here is set to simulation. To add our observed data, click Import Data over here. For this, you have two options. The first is the SWAT 2012 format or Global Weather CFSR website format. The other option is SWAT Plus format if you already had your data formatted that way. Each format is described briefly in this blue box. For more information about formatting your weather data, let's close this real quick and go over here to this top right corner. You will see on every page in the editor there's this little book icon that links to a documentation page about this section. So I click on it, and here is some information about how to specifically format those files. So let's go back to the editor and let's open this import button once more. For the demo project, we already have data in SWAT 2012 format and is located in our project folder under the weather directory. So let's go ahead and select that now. And then we just need to pick a directory to save it. You can choose any directory you want. The text and out folder is selected by default, but if you wanted to save them for future use somewhere else, you can select any directory you're choosing, and all files will be copied over to the correct folder when you write your model inputs. So let's just leave it like this and click Start Import. And now you'll see the observed weather files have been added to our weather station. You can click on any of these file names to open them. And you'll notice that these observed weather files go from 1990 all the way through 2013. So when we loaded this data, it automatically adjusted our simulation period to the entire period of our weather files. But we're going to go ahead and click on time under the simulation section on the left to adjust it. And maybe we don't want to run our model for the entire period. In this example, let's go ahead and enter 2000 here and click Save Changes. Next, we want to choose what data we want to print. So that's under the print link over here. And let's adjust our number of skip years to not print output to 3. And then if you'll scroll down, you'll see all the different print objects available. For each print object, you can print daily, monthly, yearly, and average annual. We recommend being careful selecting daily output as the file size can grow to be very large. For this demo, to save some time, let's just scroll down and check the monthly channel output. That's going to be right here. And then click Save Changes. And that really covers all the input editing we're going to be doing in this demo. But before we move on to writing our inputs and running the model, I wanted to show you a few of the other sections. You'll notice the other section that is already expanded by default is the Connections section. Connections represent all of your spatial objects in the model: channels, HRUs, routing units, aquifers, reservoirs, and recall. Recall is what they're calling point source or inlet data in SWAT+. So let's go ahead and click on the channels page just to see what it's like. This first table here represents your connect objects, And if you click on the Map View tab, you can also view it by location instead of tabular format. And if you hover here, you could view the details of that channel. So many of the inputs in SWAT Plus work in a drill down format. So you'll see this middle column here, which is your channel properties object. And if you click on one of those, you'll see this properties object links to other objects such as initial properties, hydrology and sediment, and nutrients. And each of these property files contains various input parameters that you can set. So let's go ahead and click on the hydrology and sediment one. And as you can see, you can set any value you want here and click Save Changes. You can also view these in tabular format for each of the properties. So let's go ahead and click on the table view for hydrology and sediment. And you'll see each one for each channel here in a table. You can edit each of these individually by clicking the edit icon. You'll be taken to the page we were just looking at. Or you could click this button in the upper right corner of the table to export your content values as a CSV file, make changes in Excel, and then import the changes back into your project. So if you choose export, you could just choose where to save your file, export, and then it would provide a template for you for all of your values. You can make any changes you want to it, save it, and then come back to the editor, toggle the import tab, and then import your changes back into your project. We're not going to make any changes here right now. And so I won't go into any more details about the editing sections in this video, but they mostly follow this pattern. One other thing actually you could do is edit multiple records at a time. So if you click here and say you wanted to set the same value for multiple channels, you could enter a new value here and you can choose which channels to apply it to and then click Save Changes at the bottom. So that basically provides 3 different ways of editing your inputs. And this is pretty common throughout all of these sections. So let's go ahead and move on and write our SWAT Plus input files since we're done making any input changes to this model. So let's click on the pencil icon in the action ribbon. By default, it chooses your text and out folder for writing files. Go ahead and click Save and Write Files, and then start writing files. Okay, and we're done. Let's go ahead and browse where it wrote those files. So let's go back to our project folder, and it's under Scenarios, Default, and Text and Out. And you can see all the files that we just wrote. And these are all the inputs needed to run your model. So let's go back to the editor and click the Run button. Here you have the option to run the model in debug mode. This is useful if you tried running the model once and it gave you an error. You'll need to rerun it with this checked to get a more specific error message that you can then use to contact our user group if you're unable to figure out the source of the error. Let's go ahead and click Run SWAT, and your model will start running, and this might take a few minutes to complete. If you'll remember, in our simulation settings, we chose to run the model through 2000. Okay, now it's done and it ran successfully. So we can close this, and now we can go over here to the Analyze Model Output section. So let's go ahead and click Import Output button and then Start. And what we're doing here is importing our model output text files into a SQLite database that can then be used by QSWAT Plus visualization tool. Depending what you selected, this step might take the longest, depending on what you choose to print, how long your simulation run is, and how large your watershed is. We're hoping that in a future version of the model, we'll just be able to write model output directly to the SQLite tables, and that would cut out this step entirely. But until then, we just need to run this step. So we're done. And now we can exit the editor and return to SWAT Plus for visualization. So let's click on this visualize button to open that tool. And here I'm just going to demonstrate a simple plot. So let's click on the plot tab and use your mouse to make this window a little bigger in case things get squished up. Now from the top drop down, let's choose this channel SD morph monthly output table. Now let's choose channel 1, which is our outlet. Let's choose flow out, then click the add plot button. Next we want to add our observed data. So you'll see in this text box here, the observed flow for the Robert demo is already loaded in this text box. One thing to note about this observed file is that it ends in 1997. So let's go ahead and adjust our year up here to 1997. And then after that, let's click this add observed button. And now we can plot. It'll ask you to save the file. Just type a name, click save, and let's make this a little bit bigger. And you'll see here you have two plots. One of them, you can see it, the legend's a little small, but the blue is our model flow output and the orange is our observed flow. So that concludes this basic tutorial. Again, please see the link in the description of this video. If you run into any issues, use our documentation website to troubleshoot and post a message to our user groups if needed.